Are you wondering how to detect diabetes and blood sugar problems at an early stage? Maybe you're having symptoms like numbness and tingling in your hands or feet, blurred vision, things like this. What is this telling us? Is it related to blood sugar at all? My name is Dr. Terranella, and in this video, we're going to look at some of the symptoms that might clue us into blood sugar abnormalities and some of the tests that you might consider doing if you are having those symptoms. So if you like this kind of information on health, nutrition, optimizing your health, and understanding what's going on with your body, click on the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get more videos like this one. Now for a quick disclaimer, the information in this video is for informational purposes only. It's not intended as a treatment for any health condition or as a substitute for seeing an actual doctor or medical professional. It should be used as an educational guide to deeper your understanding of your own health and treatment success. If medical attention is needed, don't delay in seeking that attention. All right, let's look at some of these symptoms that might tell us you are having diabetes or blood sugar abnormalities. Okay, so in this video, we're going to look at symptoms and labs to help you detect diabetes and prediabetes at an early stage. So first thing I wanted to point out is that diabetes and prediabetes are actually really common in the United States. It's estimated that 1 in 2 people, yes, 50% of all people in the US have some form of insulin resistance, diabetes, or prediabetes. So that's a huge amount, and a lot of them go undiagnosed. And so the purpose of this video and the subsequent videos is to educate people on how to understand what's going on with their body and when they might want to look a little bit deeper at some of these tests and understand the symptoms that are going on in your body. So some of the suspicious symptoms that you might look at as indicators of diabetes or prediabetes are things like heavy thirst, blurred vision, increased urination, even weight loss. So these 4 symptoms that I just mentioned would definitely be indicators of actually more advanced diabetes, because when your blood sugar starts to spill out into the urine, you're going to get increased volume or increased fluid chasing that glucose. And basically what happens is your kidneys have so much capacity to reabsorb the glucose, and once that gets saturated, because when you have really high blood sugar levels, that gets saturated quickly, and then some of it's going to start to spill out, and you're not going to be able to reabsorb all that carbohydrate or glucose. And so the water is going to follow that. It's going to make your bladder fill up easier. You're going to feel like you have to pee more often. You're going to lose some of the electrolytes with that, and it's going to make you feel thirsty and like you have to drink a lot more. And also with that, you can start losing weight, partially because you're losing some of that carbohydrate that you're eating on a regular basis. So those are some of the symptoms that we might think about when someone has diabetes. Maybe in those cases, you had some indicators earlier on that you might have blood sugar issues, and then you didn't do anything about it, 3 years later, 4 years later, and all of a sudden you have these symptoms. So that's an indicator that probably want to look a little closer and get some checkups so you can figure out where you're at on the spectrum. Now, as things may have gotten worse, you don't know until you actually get the labs done and get a checkup. So some other indicators or symptoms that are suspicious for blood sugar issues, insulin resistance, are things like numbness in your feet and blurred vision. So I mentioned the blurred vision for the last one because that is kind of more of a later stage issue. When the blood sugar starts to damage the arteries in the eye, you can start to get blurred vision from that. And other problems can happen in the eye from elevated blood sugar over longer periods of time. The neuropathy or numbness and tingling in the feet can happen at the medium stages of diabetes. Some people seem to be more susceptible to that, so it's not always going to happen to everyone with it, but usually as it progresses and as you have it longer, you're definitely going to have some issues with your nerve if your blood sugar is not under control. So that's the important reason to get things checked. Another common symptom, but it's not necessarily very specific to diabetes, is fatigue. So fatigue can happen with a lot of different problems, health issues, but certainly if you have some of these other things, fatigue as well might be another indicator that, hey, maybe I should get a checkup sooner than later. So some of these other symptoms too, like the neuropathy, blurred vision, even the thirst, increased urination, those are not always indicators of diabetes or insulin resistance. So make sure you don't just assume that's what you have. You need to get tested and figure this out. So when it comes to testing, there's some basic tests that are done to look for diabetes and prediabetes. And so I wanted to just give you some of the parameters for those. So blood sugar wise, when you're getting tested, anything on the fasting blood sugar for 10 to 12 hours that is above 99 and below 120, that's considered prediabetes, and anything above 120, that's considered diabetes. Usually you need to have 2 subsequent tests to diagnose the actual diabetes. But if you also do an A1C and the hemoglobin A1C is above 6.5, then you can kind of guesstimate too that the blood sugar issues are a little bit worse and that you probably do have diabetes. The A1C is also known as hemoglobin A1C, and it's basically looking at the effect of that blood sugar on the hemoglobin molecule, which is a protein, and it can start to cook that hemoglobin molecule. It gets like kind of crusty, similar to cooked bread. It gets that like nice crusty edge to it. So that's what's happening in our blood from the blood sugar. It sort of cooks that hemoglobin molecule. And the more cooking that's present there, as it gets above 6.5, that's an indicator of higher blood sugar levels. And it's actually calculated based on the amount of that cooking that's there. And so for prediabetes, it's above 5.6 and below 6.5. So those are some of the parameters that we would look at, and most obvious. When you have those, you have an issue with blood sugar, insulin resistance, etc. But what do you do when your fasting blood sugar is only 97, close to the 99, but it's not quite? And similarly, what would you do if your hemoglobin A1C is 5.6 or 5.5? Are those really a problem? What should you be thinking about in those scenarios, especially if you have some of these other symptoms too? And what other markers can we look at to triangulate where you're at on this spectrum of diabetes, prediabetes, also insulin resistance? So that's what we're going to look at in the next video, is really digging a little bit deeper on how to detect diabetes at an early age, looking at different blood sugar measurements. All right, that should give you a better understanding of what some of the symptoms that clue us in to the fact that you might be having diabetes, and some of the blood tests that we might do to clarify this or understand this better. There will be several more videos on this topic, so definitely check those out. But if you do have questions on this one, drop it in the comment section. I'm happy to answer your questions.